Okay, well, everyone's here. Everyone's ready. Let's get this show started. Welcome, 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 one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural.
There's a mega thread for this debate that's made in my subreddit, so don't make a billion threads. There's one thread right here if you want to talk about it.
Tonight, Luigi allegedly shot Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, in the back until he was dead. Many have called him a hero for this action. Some say they celebrate the action's merits, but do not condone the method. Still, others are neutrally calling it the aggregate situation understandable. But from a societal perspective, is the killing of a healthcare CEO ultimately an act of defense? Or is Mangione, as the state suggests, a terrorist and cold-blooded murderer who should not be celebrated nor lionized, but condemned in the strongest possible manner? When is vigilantism justified? That's what we're going to be talking about tonight, and we got some great guests to do it. We're going to give each of these wonderful people short introductions, and then we'll get into it. The soy pill, start us off. What is your take? What do you got?
Yeah. Hey, it's me, the soy pill. I make video essays about politics, and I'll be arguing that Luigi is a hero to people worldwide for justifiable reasons. I hope we don't get too bogged down in the definitions of terrorist and hero since they're subjective. We could all agree that Saddam Hussein, Amelia Earhart, or Osama bin Laden have committed horrible acts of terrorism, and yet they're seen as heroes to many as well. I don't expect to get my opponents to say that murder is good or to condone Luigi as a hero, but my goals in this conversation are to establish that, number one, the practices of insurance companies in denying and delaying healthcare for profit are reprehensible and tantamount to robbery or even murder. Number two, most of these practices, despite being absolutely monstrous, are within the company's legal rights, and when they aren't, they're rarely ever punished to a significant degree. Number three, Brian Thompson was aware, complicit, and encouraging of these policies. Number four, many of the people suffering or dying due to these policies have no way to see justice, and Luigi provided them a voice that they've lacked for years. And finally, number five, to approach this in good faith, if my opponents can show me that these suffering people have better short-term options for justice and aid, I will concede that their lionization of Luigi is misplaced and ignorant at best, and at worst, detrimental to society.
Okay, thanks for being here. Looking forward to it. Ash, Rube, what do you got?
Hey, Ash, Gelatinous Rue, whatever you want to call me. So I would prefer Americans not kill each other over healthcare, but it's difficult to encourage a ceasefire without some means of reprisal or some kind of leverage to encourage them to stop killing us over healthcare. So if healthcare CEOs don't want to be killed, I think that Luigi has, through a bad action, given us some leverage to encourage the members of the healthcare cartel to defect a little bit. Stop pushing for actions or laws like the like the Affordable Care Act, the 80-20 rule that encourages them to stop negotiating on our behalf and instead delay, deny, defend further and further so their investments can continue to garner more profit and they can make up any kind of excess cash that's illegal by just issuing rebates to us, while several policyholders, especially people with more expensive claims, are left out in the cold. So I think that this is an unfortunate event that has given us a lot of leverage on the side of policyholders.
Okay, we'll get into it as we go. Ukis, what do you got?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short as there's a lot already said. I think one of the cool things about living together in political communities is the creation of opportunities to live together in peace, the reliable, sort of predictable ability to resolve conflict through means other than violence. Violence in a working political community is a last resort kind of mechanism, not a first impulse tool. And because of that, any use of violence typically needs to be justified. A reason for its use has to be defended. And so if you're going to defend any particular instance of violence, you want to make sure also that your principles generalize and don't lead to any funny consequences that you aren't willing to deal with. So my basic claim, I think, today is going to be political violence may be justified in certain circumstances, and this is not one of those. And I want to see the proponents make a very strong positive case. But to avoid the sort of debate, ooh, I don't have the burden because you guys are on the positive side, my negative case is basically centered around three things that I think we'll disagree on. I think we're going to disagree on whether the action was necessary, effective, or justified. And I disagree on all those. I think it's unnecessary, ineffective, and unjustified. And so importantly, I think, like, me saying that this is a bad thing that should not have happened does not actually require me to think that the CEO was a great guy or that the company was perfectly ethical. We can argue about the particulars of that, but I think it's going to be more important to say, even if it's a bad company, even if the CEO was unethical, does that rise to the level of justifying the action that was taken? And I'm going to suggest no. And also that even if you don't even care about questions of justice, that it's not actually going to be effective at accomplishing the political ends you want if the ends you want are some sort of healthcare reform. So,
well, thank you for being here. We'll get into it as we go. Buckaroo, what do you got?
Hello. I think Luigi is a man whose face is being used as a meme to express fundamental human experience that is regardless of class, creed, language, race. Healthcare by most developed nations is considered a human right. It's something that insurance companies use as another tool to make profit. We see racial, economic, and educational disparities reinforced by the denial ratings of these companies, only further souring the relationship between an already disenfranchised claimant and their insurance provider. We see the American opinion of health insurance reaching the lowest it has within the past 2 decades, and ultimately many agencies utilize a strategy I have expressed using a chart I borrowed from the soy pill here tonight. Okay. If you can see, we've got fuck around and we've got find out. Emphasis being on the fucking around, perhaps not enough of the finding out, the methods of which I believe to be a direct result of the seeming violence, quote unquote, that they commit against the American people.
Okay. We'll get into it as we go. Last but certainly not least, Destiny. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that the positive argument obviously needs to.
We cannot hear
Are
you.
you muted?
Sorry, I was just talking really quietly, actually. I think that the positive argument has to be provided for, obviously, because I think that the killing fails. I think basically in every aspect. Obviously, it fails legally. Somebody earlier here literally gave the definition for terrorism, which is that this murder gives leverage for a political change, which was literally why New York State decided to use the terrorism subcharge to get it to first-degree murder, and that's the definition of it, is to try to affect some political outcome. It fails personally, like the person was not personally impacted by any of the healthcare industry in a negative way, even though people tried to say he was initially. At first, it was that his poor grandma died, and then it was that he had a bad experience, and now it comes out he's just a rich kid who had surgery, and his experiences had nothing to do with negative health insurance companies or anything like that. It fails ethically. I don't think that you can say just because this guy is the CEO of a company who's engaged in a business that you don't like, we should be able to kill anybody in management as a result of that. I think that's a little bit absurd. We can think of should I be allowed to kill the CEO or kill executives who work at gun manufacturing companies or car companies or what? It's just, especially in one of the most tightly regulated industries in the entire United States. That's, I think, an absurd claim. And then I think it fails most importantly, consequentially. There are really good conversations that we could be having about improving healthcare in the United States. Almost none of those conversations are solely centered around health insurance industries. There's a whole bunch of expensive things in U.S. healthcare, between hospitals, between doctors, between private practice, between insurance, between pharmaceutical companies. There are so many different things that are expensive in the United States. To saddle all of this, at the feet of health insurance companies, I think is incredibly naive. And I think that this killing is going to result in absolutely nothing changing, because none of the conversations about any of the industry now are productive. It's just idolizing this random loser who is mentally insane who decided to kill a healthcare exec for whatever reason.
Okay. Well, I guess let's start there. Terrorist charge that the New York State's bringing on to the Luigi case. Who here thinks that that's an appropriate thing, that that's a good thing that they're doing this? Raise your hand.
Probably.
So everyone.
I gave the reasoning earlier.
Charging him with terrorism?
It's accurate at the very least. I said earlier, he's providing us leverage to hopefully engender some kind of ceasefire between healthcare companies and other aspects of the healthcare industry. Hospitals are involved in this as well. Hopefully to reconsider some of their policies and say, maybe we shouldn't do this. So if that's the definition of terrorism, then why would it be inappropriate to charge him?
If you had to rate your confidence on how likely you think it is that any hospital or insurance company or healthcare system will change its policies as a result of this, what's your confidence on that? How likely do you think this actually is?
One guy?
Yeah.
Just one? Not very confident.
Okay, yeah. So I if the likely or if the possibility of change is part of the justification for this act, I just don't I don't see the actual line here. Like,
Well, his line,
does
just to
that
be clear,
even
he's
matter?
advocating for more of it happening, is what he's saying.
well,
but
sure, yeah. So I
I think
was
it's a possibility.
Eucharist, though, would you then be okay with it if it completely 100% changed the conversation? Like this?
no, but I
that
think
done?
a lot of the people who are defending it are thinking that it will be effective, and I want them to grapple with the fact that it's not. I want them to realize that even if you think this is justified because it's effective, and I don't think it would be even if it was, that this is probably not going to be effective. In fact, I think this will probably have a backlash effect that will probably entrench some of these problems y'all are complaining about.
Well, what metric would you have to see that this was an effective policy? Would the healthcare system need to change significantly? Would one company need to change their policies? Would we need single payer? Like, what would convince you that this itself was the driving force? Because it's a little soon to say. It hasn't even been a month. So this could completely change something by the next midterm. It could completely change the conversation 4 years from now. Like, who knows? But
nobody even remembers the Burnell dude that set himself on fire for Gaza. Why would we expect that we're going to remember this like months from now?
Well, I'm actually glad you brought that up because I thought it was actually the difference between these two things is one is this guy could have gone and burned himself, self-immolated in front of the United Healthcare building. And yeah, you're right. We probably would have forgotten about him. But because this was so egregious and blatant, everyone is talking about this. Like, this has completely changed the conversation. None of us would be here today if he hadn't done that. I actually have a stat for you specifically, Destiny. If you had to guess, last year before the shooting, you made 305 videos on YouTube. How many of them discussed healthcare specifically?
2 maybe, I don't know, probably not many.
Yeah, that's actually, conservatively 2. And that's if you're talking about like, Eastern medicine. Maybe one is like anti-vax, whereas now at least 2 since the shooting has happened. I know this conversation will probably be uploaded. You had your debate with Vegan Gains, so that's an 11,000% increase in healthcare videos, and you have a very wide audience. That's really
how many other people are having like productive conversations about healthcare?
I don't know. You can like turn on every single news station. They're all talking about this.
That productive. No, they're just talking about Luigi, the fact that he shot somebody. But I don't even think we're talking about it much anymore. We've kind of moved on. We're in the next part of the news cycle. We're waiting for Trump to come into office. Like,
I have no way to check this or prove this, but a similar question back at you three. How many of you before this news cycle could have confidently named Brian Thompson as the CEO of this company? Did you know him by name or sight or face? Okay. Right. So one of the issues I've had with this whole like sort of grave dancing in the aftermath of the Luigi incident is like I could maybe be perfectly okay with seeing people do the kind of grave dancing where I've seen some of these anecdotes. Specifically, people are like, yeah, I wasn't insured by United and they denied my claim for this. Screw that guy in particular. I'm really pissed about it. I've been following, the lawsuit against him for his insider trading and all of this, and I hated him and his guts, and I'm glad this happened. Those people, fine, whatever. But most people had no idea who this guy was, had no idea what was going on in this company, probably couldn't have told you anything about any of these stats beforehand. Maybe you're right, Soy Pill, that like that's a good thing now that we're talking about it. But I do think that there's something really weird about just being like, yes, this guy in particular was so evil and so bad that I think a random person, rich guy who was not affected by his actions, gunning him down in the street is justified and thumbs up and okay. And I'm going to celebrate it, even though 2 weeks ago I couldn't have told you anything about him.
I personally do agree.
That, though?
Just one at a time. Let's go to Buckaroo and then let's go to...
I do agree there is a massive, like a lot of people didn't really know who he was, but I think that is just relaying a serious issue within health insurance agencies as a whole and with healthcare, with how healthcare is provided to an individual patient or in this case claimant. I think the distance that is put between the individual patient and the care that they're provided actively perpetuates this this dehumanization that goes both ways. We complain a lot about how we are seen as numbers on a chart, and so is Brian Thompson in this case. So I actually think your argument goes to it goes to express a greater issue that I think is perpetuated by insurance companies as a whole.
Does this mean that
Brian Thompson...
Would this mean that you're like super against single payer then, since probably the government sees you as a number more than any other, like that would be the largest organization in the entire country that could...
I personally prefer something more like a 2-tier system at least, but I also, looking at like Nordic models, for example, you see a lot of more localized government control over the individual like healthcare being provided, and then the greater government is just helping facilitate that.
Wait, in Sweden and Norway, they don't have federal level payment?
They do, but they offer a lot of allowance to the individual counties as to the way they facilitate it.
Okay. I still don't see how like having like a county level thing is like at the end of the day, I feel like the only thing that matters is you interfacing personally with your doctor, not knowing where the guy who authorizes your treatments lives.
Well, the difference is in one of these countries, the non-profit healthcare system is incentivized to get the best care for the people and not to make money. And the CEO is part of those decisions that go down and say, hey, let's see how we can make more money. How can we deny claims? How can we make the most profit for our company?
Well, how do they make money in the United States?
It depends. They have like 2/3 of their investments are in bonds. If they have a loss-adjusted ratio that's lower than 100%, then they're paying out less than they're getting in. But it depends.
Well, so that
Usually it's
2/3, I don't know where that. So the vast majority of the money comes from premiums that they're paid, right? And they have to pay out at least 80% of that in healthcare costs. Mm-hmm. So how are they making money? Like, couldn't you argue that the U.S. healthcare system is incentivized to make money by charging people for things? So, like going to the hospital and delivering levels of care that you know are going to be effective, or like would people buy a drug if they knew that it wouldn't work, or would people go to the hospital if they knew that it wouldn't work? Or
I'm not sure I'm following. Could you?
You're saying that they're incentivized to profit. Well, how does a company make profit? By selling a good or service. We think that healthcare is probably important, so we consume that good or service. So
by selling a good or service or denying people claims. So saying, I mean, you can look at any of these examples. I'll just bring up a bunch. But do you know what a MIST is? Like a minor impact soft tissue?
No.
So there's a specific strategy for missed claims where they say, look, the payouts for these are incredibly minor, and they're also very hard to prove because you don't get x-rays or specific medical diagnoses that are super, super obvious. So it's more profitable to us to just say no to all of these and hope that the vast majority of the people don't fight it. The ones that do fight it realize that the litigation is going to cost more than the payout ever would be, and then they make more money off that and are not providing the promised care to the people that they're supposed to.
Wait, so you're telling me there are health insurers where it explicitly says that they cover things like these minor impact soft tissue injuries, and then they but they actually don't cover any of them? Can you give me an example of a company that does that I can look up?
Yeah, look up Allstate.
Wait, for health insurance or is this for car insurance?
No, this is for car insurance.
Okay, we're not talking about car insurance, we're talking about health insurance. I think it's a different type of thing, right?
Okay, so then we could look at the recent report that came out from the permanent subcommittee on investigations, where this is, you've talked about this on stream, the AI denials of people getting post-acute healthcare. This post-acute healthcare, for those of you who don't know, means when you get a procedure, let's say some sort of surgery, or you need something and you need that care afterwards, they have this system that determines whether or not you need it. That system might be based on a couple of factors. It ranks all these points, and if you're over a certain threshold, they just deny you that care. People who are denied care either have to pay out of pocket, go through litigation, or forgo that care entirely. And the consequences of forgoing that care are either your condition worsens, it becomes permanent, or you die. So what about that? That's healthcare. That's literally specifically
so I don't know
from
where
United Health.
So I don't know real quick, that 90% number, the only place I've ever been able to find that before, that wasn't from any House subcommittee or whatever. That was from a lawsuit.
Okay, let's say it's 1%. It doesn't matter. The point is that people are dying because of this.
The point is do we think that every single denial is bad? It should.
No, there are tons of denials that are fine. Fraud is the second biggest white collar crime of all time. People like to commit insurance fraud, and we should have checks for that. But that doesn't mean that most of these denials are okay. And if you look at the quotes,
I will hold on, just real quick. This is to you, Soy, and to your side. Wouldn't it matter how much of this is happening? We can recognize in any system there's going to be failures, there's going to be fraud, as you said, there's going to be bad actors. Like, how many people have to have died for what Luigi did to be justified?
I'd say he's a hero to whoever of the people who had family or friends die, regardless if that's 1 person, 1,000 people, 40,000 people, whatever the number is. Obviously, there's probably a more reasonable threshold. It's not 1, it's probably hundreds, if not thousands. The point is that these systems being used are based on whistleblower testimony, not adequate to what adjusters would normally do to give people the proper payouts.
What if you
I will also note, we do. Sorry, thank you. I will also note we do see that there are nearly 17% of in-network claims that are denied, at least in 2021. And 77% of all of those were just listed as other reasons. There wasn't even a clear outline as to why they were being denied, as to whether it had to do with their specific policy or if they filled out the forms wrong, which is part of the denial rating as well.
Wait, hold on, real quick on that. If somebody filled out a form wrong, wouldn't that be a good reason to deny somebody?
I believe that if a company is being, I believe that if a company is promoting themselves as offering some concept of safety to their customers, I think that is something that they should be held to, whether or not there is like one line in a policy, buried in pages upon pages that maybe exempts them from a small amount of coverage.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, some of these, like, oh, you filled this out wrong, are tantamount to the voter, tests that they used to have for black people in the, 1800s.
I'm sorry, I'm going to need an example of that, where you're filling out a convoluted test, and then that is the incorrect form. And that's how they're denying a thing.
It is also amount of paperwork for any of these cases, and they're specific on policy records. I believe McKinsey documents have promoted this. Or if you don't want to go back to auto insurance, we can just talk about the fact that these companies do share practices. It's like one of the only antitrust laws they can get around is to make the documentation more complicated, more difficult to fill out, and to delay those claims as long as possible for whatever reason you can. So they already delay them when they know they're justified in paying them out for if someone had an alibi, if they thought they might have committed arson fraud, if someone had some sort of, I don't know, a health issue where they produced all of the medical documents necessary to show that they actually do have that condition and they do need that care. Already at that point, they are denying those claims just to prolong and fight and make that litigation cost those people more, to take that money and to invest that float for extra interest in the long term.
They don't make money. So just real quick, they don't make money on these filings are public. Where they make the money, they don't make a lot of money on investments. That's just not the case. There's because the money that comes in and out of these companies is moving so quickly. They don't invest a ton of this money and make a ton of profit this way.
But that is how they get rid of that's how they get around the fact that their ratio of payouts to claims can be over 100%. That's the only way they can make profit otherwise.
Okay, so there's
that's not true.
I will also note the NICA or NAIC, the National.
No, finish your point, then you, Chris. Finish your point, then you, Chris. I'm just trying to. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. The National Association of Insurance Commissioners. Sorry, I have my notes down here. That's why I'm reading. They actually have a model of it's Model Unfair Claims Settlement Practices Act, and under it actually lists a bunch of different unfair practices that are utilized by insurance agencies, and that it includes not attempting in good faith to effectuate prompt, fair, and equitable settlement of claims submitted in which liability has become reasonably clear. And this is one of, I believe, 15 different unfair practices that are utilized by insurance companies that actively go against this.
And Buckaroo, I will add that they will only punish you if they can establish that's a commonplace business practice. If you do it once or twice, they will not punish you for that.
Eucharist, go ahead.
Yeah, there's multiple levels here that are difficult, because one of the things we're dealing with is when we look up how often do insurance companies deny these claims, the numbers for that are not always good or useful.
They're not available, actually.
Exactly, right. So when we get numbers, they're from publicly available databases or reporting and things like this that don't come directly from the company, right? So that's maybe a problem. But they're also
there, Professor, because it's not
you gotta let you.
Okay, I'll write it down. Sorry, go ahead.
They're also only tangentially useful sometimes, because some of those numbers include things like denial for pre-authorization, failure to file pre-authorization requests, and those typically get hashed out between insurer and hospital, not at the patient level. So usually, if you get something in the mail that says your claim was denied because there was no pre-authorization request, you will sometimes see something at the bottom that says something like patient is not liable for blah, 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 because that's something that gets hashed out. The hospital should have asked the insurance before they did it. They didn't, and then they hash it out, right? So that gets included in that bucket of denials. And so what we're just concerned about is percentage of denied claims and how many of those are claims that should have been approved. What we're saying is we're looking for the percentage of denied claims that are actually fraudulent, which is we are contracted to cover this. You have shown that this should be covered, and we're not going to pay it anyway. And so that's what we're looking for within that big number, and it's hard to find. And because, as you said, the numbers are not available. That is another issue, right? Because
I want to jump in on that. It's the reason the numbers are not available is because these insurance companies lobby to make sure that they do not have to publish them.
Sure. You know who else has lobbied to make sure they don't have to publish them, though, is labor unions. There's an article I'll send you guys later if you want. ProPublica has done a series of essays on this.
But the point is that the NAIC is the only people that get this. They report it to them privately. They're not even a governmental institution. You can get accounts from the people who work at this place, and they say that like you said, the data is overlapping. It's ambiguous. They don't all use the same reporting standards. And finally, there are companies that do transparently release this data. One actually that I know of called Chubb, and it's the most transparent, and it's lets the best consumer to ensure a relationship. It costs a little more, but is completely possible for all of these people to release all of their data.
Yeah, all of this is hold on, just real quick. All of this is nice, good, interesting information. It's connected to the topic at hand, but the topic at hand is let's just cede all of that ground, right? The health insurance companies are bad. They do bad things.
Well, no, you can't cede the ground because this is literally where the conversation is and where it needs to happen. Because if it is the case, because the problem is that on one end, you've got this caricaturized version of health insurers who are just like, the only way we can make money is by denying everybody all their claims all the time, and we do it maliciously and evilly and we whatever. Like that's on one end. And then on the other end, it's like, okay, well, you've got businesses that function in like the most heavily regulated environment, probably of all U.S. businesses, probably in all industry in the United States, and denials happen. Like even Medicare and Medicaid have double-digit denial rates, and like this is just part of operating in this industry. So, like if we're all, I think, because I imagine even Eucharist, I imagine you would agree that if it was the case that health insurance companies were just arbitrarily, maliciously, and evilly denying people claims for literally no reason, but just to watch people die and make more money, in that case, fuck, if a guy gets whacked or whatever, I don't know, maybe.
Well, hold on, who's claiming that they're doing it to watch
I would want to
them die?
argue, even in that case, that they're like, you should be prosecuting for the fraud that's happening, right? Which was exactly what was happening with the lawsuit against Brian and other people for insider trading, right? That to the extent that UHC is actually committing fraud on the level you guys are alleging, there are legal avenues
that's fraud
that you
against
can
other
pursue.
rich people. That's like if you look at any CEO that's ever been prosecuted for any of these things, at least what I could find, 9/10 of like every single article is all, oh, you were defrauding investors. And the one person who ever actually went to jail, I don't have it right in front of me. Let's see right here. Yeah, Kothari and McMenamin, who just like were so egregiously lying about their claims, making up numbers completely, that it was prosecuted. Everything else is the status quo, and that's kind of the point, is that you can deny all these claims. You can implement these computer systems that group people and segment them into these groups that don't make sense on an individual one-to-one basis, and it's not illegal. It's not considered immoral. I mean, we have two people right now arguing that it's totally okay. In the meantime, these people are just dying. And I'm not saying, Destiny,
this doesn't
you mentioned,
happen.
oh,
You're lying when you say, hold on, what percentage of insurance denials are just like denying people necessary care and then they die? If you had to guess, like, what do you feel like that is?
don't know. They don't release the numbers.
Guess, but you have a strong enough feeling you think a CEO should die over it. So tell me what you think in your head. Like, what's your intuition? Like, what do you think it's around?
Let me be clear. I don't actually necessarily even support the murder. I don't know if I want to live in a world where the way
but I
that
still want to know intuitively. What do you think is like the amount of arbitrary bullshit denials, and then people are like dying or having severely horrible adverse outcomes for denials that are
What
just
number would I have to say for you to change your mind?
I mean, I think any number is not necessarily good, and I think we should probably seek to reform the industry. But like in my mind, this number is probably like, I would say easily less than 10%, probably less than 5% in terms of like probably less than 1%. But it feels like in your guys' mind,
where's that coming from? Because I have no idea. I'm not going to say
the fact that it's like the most heavily regulated industry in the United States.
What do you think that means when you say it's the most heavily regulated?
As in, there's a fuck ton of like paperwork. There's a fuck ton of information that's required to be like, for instance, somebody said earlier that claims are rejected for no reason. That's not even possible under the ACA. You literally have to. You have to provide a reason for rejecting a claim. It's a requirement of the ACA.
To be clear, the claim was all other reasons.
I don't think you can give that.
Claim.
I don't
you
think
can reject. You can reject and delay.
I don't think you can just reject for no reason for all reasons.
This,
that doesn't make any sense.
But I'm not saying for no reason. I'm saying for all other reasons. I think it's just, at least in the data that was being sourced.
Hold on. Other than
looking
fraud,
at,
just maybe this
it was
will
used.
Help. Buckaroo. Other than fraud, what do you think would be a legitimate reason for a health insurance company to deny a claim? What would give me an example of what you would think would be a legitimate, non-fraudulent reason where the healthcare insurance provider can and should say, we're not covering that?
I think if somebody's trying to jump the gun on treatment options, for example, they want to skip over like all of the preventative options and go straight to the most extreme option that also happens to be more expensive because it's utilizing more expensive technology, I would say that's worth denying, because I think people should be trying to take an exhaustive approach, or at least like attempting some sort of approach to preventative care before seeking out the most expensive options. I think a lot of elective surgeries, whether or not I agree with all the classifications of elective surgeries. I think there are a lot of elective surgeries that are just fine to be denied because, I don't think everybody needs to have a nose job. Not everybody needs to have, elective surgeries. I mean, I could go down a list of them.
Wait,
but
just as a real quick audience thing. So an elective surgery is just something that's not life-threatening. It's not always a cosmetic surgery. So, for instance, if you have like a bone that's like broken or didn't heal right, or it's kind of like fucked, but it's not like threatening your life, you can schedule that surgery in advance. That's not like a cosmetic surgery, but that could be like an elective surgery, assuming it's not like a life-threatening.
Well, this is a part of why I'm talking about surgeries that are talking about options that are not taking an exhaustive effort to their like preventative care and to appropriate care at first, because perhaps what they actually need is a cast first, but they're refusing a cast and they want to have the surgery instead. I think there are a lot of different circumstances in which there are surgeries that may or may not be covered for good reason. Eucharist? You look like you have a thought.
Yeah, I do. I guess my question for you all, related to what Destiny said, is like, well, I imagine if we all agree, if there is this amount of thing happening, well, probably good that this guy got captured or whatever. I guess I'm wondering what the threshold is for you guys. Like, what level of harm or fraud you think justifies these things? And so, this is for all of you, but for Soy Pill specifically, I did watch your video on this, and you had the section where you bring up Hannah Arendt's Eichmann in Jerusalem. Very interesting section. And one thing that I quoted, I'm hoping I'm quoting it correctly, you bring up this thing that she's talking about effectively, which is that there were thousands of office workers within the Third Reich who were completely removed from any death or killing and were just as responsible for making those deaths happen. And your summary basically is sometimes evil is just a pencil-pushing nerd. And I'm just wondering, first, what is the threshold of evil enough that we think somebody should be, hauled in front of a trial and executed, or potentially extrajudicially executed on the street? And then who in this system of banal evil is eligible for extrajudicial assassination now, if I accept your premise that lots of evil is pencil-pushing nerds in this healthcare system that we all agree is very extensive, right? It's hospitals, it's insurers, it's the government, it's everybody. So which of these people can I just cap if I want to, right?
Okay,
do you guys know the names of other C-suite executives at United? Do you know who
No, they
CEO
took them all
is?
down, so we can't.
Do you want to like which of these people, right? Yeah.
Right. So first of all, I want to clarify. I don't necessarily want to live in a world where the only way to get change is to cap people in the back of the head. I still have some hope that there is a way to work within the system. I'm just saying that the people who do view this man as a hero do not feel as if they can live to see that change, or do not believe that change is possible. So just to get that out of the way, that's my position. Second of all, when you are in a position of power, whether or not you are on the internal committee that is deciding whether or not to use these systems that are arbitrarily denying people, and like I said, I think Destiny, you mentioned like, oh, they're these evil healthcare companies, they're wringing their hands. Like, I don't believe necessarily that they're viewing it that way, as this like, oh yeah, how many people can we kill today? It's a matter of turning people into numbers and disassociating from the humanity of those people, right?
This is what every single system necessarily has to do, right? Why do you say that? Like, turning people into numbers. The government would have to do this as well. Every single,
no, it doesn't, because other insurance companies have the responsibility to give out the money that they promise their people, and they just do it, and they make less money, and it's not for profit, and that's how nonprofits work.
Yeah, but the government would have to run under a certain budget as well. They might not be paying out profits, but they're going to be given a budget by the government that they have to come in under, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Just to be clear, I have a different argument that's relying on the incentive structure on how these people are treated, not necessarily that they're being treated as numbers or.
Can I make my last point, Ash, and then let you join in? Because he asked me like, at what point can I kill someone? And if you look at the agents, the adjusters, and their incentives in the structure, yeah, there's cash for making the company perform well and have better profits incentives. They are specifically quotes. I could get a quote here. I don't have it off the top of my head, but essentially people are fired for not adhering to the system. So if the like Colossus system, that's one of the computer systems they use, says, hey, you should deny this person care. They review it and say, I actually don't think this deserves a denial. They can be fired for that. So I don't think those people are nearly as responsible. They're not the ones making the decisions. They're not the ones implementing these systems, and they're fully aware. Brian Thompson is someone who worked his way up through the company, saw the top to bottom structure, and then got to the point where he could make change. He could say, hey, I don't think these systems are good. I think we're denying too many people care. I think that we should be more responsible to the people that deserve payouts, and he didn't. So he is like definitely at least above the threshold. Again, I don't necessarily mean he deserves to die, but I consider him much more responsible. Sorry,
just as a quick thing, when you say that people are being denied based on some system or some AI or whatever, what do you think it's using to deny those people? What do you think it's weighing there generally?
It's a ton of things. I mean, for example, again, if you keep jumping on this because it's car insurance, this is just the one I know off the top of my head.
Car insurance doesn't count because car insurance is not anywhere near as heavily regulated as medical insurance. It's a much different thing.
Okay, so then I don't know the specifics of any of the ones except the Colossus system, which I know is flags and it's based on car insurance. So what are the other ones, if you know?
Although it is relating to health insurance, to be clear, it is still the insurance industry as it relates to the health of the individual claimant that is pursuing some sort of medical care or some sort of reimbursement for their medical care.
Buckaroo, do you think that an auto insurance guy bears responsibility for someone gets in an accident, they get injured because of that accident? The auto insurance guys don't pay the repair bill for whatever reason.
Well, I'm still talking about how it relates to health insurance, to be clear. I'm not talking about the repair bill for the car. I'm talking about the health insurance, the insurance that relates to the health of the claimants that may or may not have been injured in the accident in the first place.
Yeah, and the car insurance has to pay out for auto injuries, so it's still part of their health. And if they delay or deny claims on, I don't know, whiplash, which is the minor impact surgical tissue or whatever it is, soft tissue, that can make your, like, if you don't get that repaired in the 3-month window, that can make your condition permanent or
so. Are
worse
they?
than,
Are they on the chopping block, or are they on the wanted posters?
I'm actually glad you asked this because I did want to put in my 2 cents as well. I think almost anybody participating in the medical and insurance industry could bear maybe like 1 penny of claim.
What about the lawyers defending those?
But this is why I think there is like a fundamental issue with the insurance companies and with the system of healthcare that we have in the United States, and why I believe that more individualized care and more direct interactions between providers
what about
and
the lawyers
people
for these
buying
insurance companies?
I'm sure everybody on this panel could
like I said,
agree that
no,
if
this is what I mean, though. I think everybody
Everyone stop, because I'm trying to get to some clear answers. So the auto insurance, they're on the hook. The lawyers for these insurance companies, they're on the hook. What about reporters and things who paint insurance companies in a positive light? Are they on the hook?
I mean, again, I don't even know if I agree with the statement "on the hook" because I think this is a system that is perpetuated by almost every single person who participates within it. I don't think there's one person that you could say this is the one person that if he's gone, then everything's perfectly resolved, which is also why I presented my issue with the whole conversation in the first place as a result of the treatment of claimants of treatments of claimants. I think it's less just a conversation about justification, but more about cause and effect. If there are people who feel like they've been wronged at such an extreme level, I think they're going to have some sort of negative reaction. And after about 3 decades of the implementation of delay, deny, defend, as proposed by the McKinsey and Company, the consulting company that a lot of these insurance agencies specifically sought out, I think that is a huge part of what's perpetuated these issues now. And I think a great way to resolve it would be to reform the whole system.
Okay. Ash, you've been trying to get in. Sorry.
Just briefly, I'm sure that we could all agree that if somebody is engaged in fraud, then whatever the punishment we decide is appropriate for that person, it's going to be based on proximity to their responsibility for the fraud. United Health Group employs something like 440,000 people. I'm sure that we could agree that if somebody is closer than not or has more decision-making power within the company, Brian Thompson is, would you disagree that he's within the top 1,000 of those 440,000?
He's certainly more influential than the person.
Would it be unreasonable to say the top 100 or even maybe the top 20? Who would you kill if you were Luigi?
Wait. It depends on what you mean by like decision making process. So like like a manager or a chief executive officer might be making more broad level decisions in a company, but they might be further removed from like an individual making a fraudulent decision. Let's say you literally have a store called like Morals Are Us, and it's the most moral CEO ever, and then you've got like a frontline employee who like intentionally swaps medications for people at the pharmacy just to watch them die. We wouldn't say that the CEO is responsible for that individual's criminal act as contrary to the law and company policy, right?
And in the same sense,
about
going back to the
promoting
Eichmann and Jerusalem situation, right? We just recently hauled another Nazi prison guard before a court who has managed to outlive his years, right? He was like a 17-year-old Nazi prison guard, right? We prosecuted people who were at the lowest rungs of this, just implementing what their superiors said. That's the point of the whole Eichmann comparison, right?
Well,
so,
no, the
so I don't know
difference
if
being
I can
that guy watched and
on the
maybe
phone
killed
who's just
Jews versus
applying the algorithm, right? If the algorithm is so evil and it's defrauding people at this grand scale, the person who's on the phone saying, "Yeah, man, your claim was denied. I can't do anything about it. I checked the box and it spit out the output. What can I do about it, man?" Like, is that person any less complicit in the scheme you guys are developing? I'm not sure. Like,
well, yeah, because their livelihood
say
is on
that
the
they are
line in
obviously
terms of
less
changing it.
complicit.
Like they will literally.
so was the
be
Nazi
fired.
prison guard. Like, I don't see the dispute.
They were just following
and I say a
orders.
Nazi prison guard is just as responsible, and we'd have to.
To be clear,
either have
I
to
don't have an
desert or do
argument
something
based on
else.
the Nazi prison guard. I'm just going based off of modern.
I don't have
examples,
Nazis in
modern
any
law.
of my arguments. To be clear, at no point did I study Nazis for this.
Well, I'm
discussion.
implicating you in Soy Pill's argument. Okay, he put a video on the internet. You're on his side in this debate, and you get
Use
it
my
all.
graph.
Okay.
You got to do it.
No, I'm innocent. I swear.
No,
That's
I
what the
guess
Nazis
I
said.
still have not heard like a very convincing like here's why I can't kill a mid-level manager at UHC. Okay, wait, another question I have then on this same line, right?
Can I invoke a
I
Nazi
personally
argument?
just
Actually,
think you
Professor? Because we want to talk about Nazis. Do you know?
Sure,
that,
go ahead and invoke the Nazi argument, and then I have
Do you
a
know
question
that?
I'll
Do you know,
save.
well,
Yes,
yeah.
please.
Sorry to interrupt, but do you know the indie movie Schindler's List?
Yeah.
You know how Oskar Schindler probably couldn't overthrow the entire Nazis, but had plenty of options as the head of a company to save people, to defy them, to subvert them at every possible moment without actually dying, and he did that.
Sure. Yeah.
So, do you think that Brian Thompson could have done that?
No,
No. Why not?
because you can't even list a single way in which he could have. One, he's not even the person that's shot calling at the end of the day in terms of like what the company's doing, right? He would just be fired as CEO.
You don't think a CEO has any influence in the company? I'm
I'm
aware that there's
he
a
would just be fired, right? What do you mean?
What? No, I'm just saying that a CEO has influence over what the company does. If he's promoting the AI system, I mean, you can tell me that he was just like a pretty face to promote that system. I don't know. I don't think so. I think he was
yeah, but hold on. When you
doing
say
it because
AI
he knows what that system does.
We're all young. None of us are 75 years old here. Okay, I don't think AI needs to be like the scary word that makes something automatically bad.
Okay, well, then say the computer system. They've been using them for 30 years, and they've been overly denying people. We have quotes from people in the industry. We have quotes from people in the industry that they are not fair to the standard of what a normal adjuster would say. These are from people in the industry are saying this. So if they
then
know
why not some more of those quotes that have things about car insurance? Again, this is all built on the idea that like these companies are maliciously and evilly just denying people.
It's not malicious
for no reason.
Well, first of all, you could say it's malicious, but I'm just saying that they're using these systems under the guise of, hey, we want to reduce our administrative costs. But you can look and they know in this Senate report that literally came out 2 months ago, they see that the costs that they're saving on their administrative costs are like $2 million. The cost that they're saving because of denials from the system they're using is like in the 10 times magnitude, 100 times magnitude.
But that doesn't even make sense.
Wait.
That doesn't even make sense because if they decrease their administrative costs, they would have to pay back premiums to their customers. Because if your administrative costs get too low, you have to pay out 80% of all of your premiums as healthcare costs. So if you were to reduce your administrative costs too much, and then that would to decrease, and you were like making more money than you were supposed to, you have to pay the premiums back. Companies have done this before. You can't just hoard premiums from customers. You have to pay this out to people.
And they do pay out a certain amount of claims. This is not about them denying literally every single claim, but that they are denying what I believe and what Soy Pill believes. And I just remember that Ash had something to say after this.
That's holding his head. And
but
Professor
they are still denying what I believe to be in a wrongfully high percentage of claims.
High percentage of
and
like what kind of claims? How do we even know that? How do we even quantify that?
We can't say wrongfully high because they won't release the data.
So then how can you justify killing somebody?
Advocate under the.
I just have a part of my issue.
Whew, easy.
Yes, I would agree with that. I also just have issues with
more data. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, also, I will note I'm not in support of murdering. I think choosing other options is usually the best choice. I think murder is bad. But I do think it happens nonetheless.
We have to do a little throat clearing, but we all get what you're trying to say. Let's give it to Ash. Ash has some things to say, and he's been trying to get in. Go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly, these rebates are the means by which these companies make up for their administrative costs. If you because they have to file at the end of the year. Sorry, not the end of the year. It's I think their fiscal year, whatever, is July 31st is their filing deadline. Though if they file by, I believe it's September 15th, it's still considered on time. If you were to, let's say, hypothetically, deny or just delay claims by denying them, let them go through arbitration, whatever, you kick them back and forth and back and forth, and eventually towards the end of the year, you find that, hey, some of these claims actually, if we pay these out, we're going to get a lot closer to our proper ratio of administrative costs. We might be a little bit over the line, but we can issue those as rebates, and by rebates here, we're looking at $54 checks to every single customer within their group of policyholders, right? Basically to every single customer of that company.
That's an interesting hypothesis, but then we should be able to do a very easy study and show, are you more likely to have a claim denied in the beginning or end of the year? We should be able to see that. Like, that would show up very easily, right?
How would we do that? Wait, how would we do that?
You could survey customers, you could survey hospitals, you could survey, what do you mean? There's a million ways you can measure that. When did you have a healthcare claim denied? Yes or no? And you say yes.
Yeah, but
when did
what
you file?
correlation are you looking for?
Well, if you're saying that people are going to deny claims at the beginning of the year and then wait until the end of the year to decide whether or not they're going to accept it or something.
Did I make that argument that all claims are going to be denied at the beginning of the year?
You made it sound like they would wait until you made it sound like they would wait until the end of the year to determine whether or not they wanted to accept or reject some percentage of claims.
No, that would be patently absurd. You would pay as you go, and you would have a ratio that gets you closer and closer to that 80% ratio, but not too much over that, because then you've basically screwed yourself out of some administrative costs that you can manage. And then on top of that, you have unfulfilled claims at the end of the year because they're being arbitrated or being denied by automated systems or by systems that you've set up previously. And then you're over. It's operating under Price is Right rules, where you want to get as high as possible, but not too high, not over.
Sure, but I mean, this is going to be done on a rolling month. Why would you have to wait till the end of the year for that? You could just like check month to month to see how your like administrative costs to premiums are, right?
So if you're doing it month to month, are you going to go over every single month?
You're probably going to try to stay right within where you need to be every single month.
I would think that you would go a little bit lower if you have an easy out provided to you by the government that lets you hit that 80% ratio exactly on the dime.
Yeah, but that's because you're assuming, yes, but this is getting back to the other question. You're assuming then at the end of the year that they would just arbitrarily deny things for no reason just to maintain some like thing, and nobody's demonstrated that.
I don't have to assume that at all. We know that denials happen all throughout the year. We know that some percentage of these denials stay denied because people just don't go through the administrative hassle or stress of arguing back and forth with their insurance company that, yes, I actually do need this surgery. I was in a car accident. This is covered. I would like, yes, something is wrong with my spine. 20 doctors have confirmed it. Sure, I'll go see your doctor 2.5 hours away if I must.
And I do think that goes again, once again, back to
it sounds like, just real quick, it sounds like your issue,
it sounds like to hit 75% at the end of the fiscal year, and for them to have a means to make up that remaining 5% at the end of the year.
Yeah, so the one example you just gave was somebody seeing 20 out-of-network doctors who are going to an in-network doctor, then pay for a different insurance. Or
I never said out-of-network doctor. That's just something that you made up.
What do you mean by
most insurance is provided by employers, to be clear. So you can't always just buy different insurance. It would include going to a different employer that buys different insurance packages and then offers you insurance.
No, I'm just talking about like you get a physical exam from several different doctors and your treatment, which is a surgery, gets denied.
Why would you get a physical exam from several different doctors, and then if they recommended a treatment that you needed?
How about if the insurance company requests it from you because that's their condition for the denial or the adjudication or arbitration of this denial to proceed to the next step?
And then after the 20 that they requested, then you have to go to the one other one that they wanted you to see the first?
That would be pretty fucking absurd, and it's why an insurance company lost in a lawsuit describing this exact situation, which is why people are pissed off, by the way. You don't actually need to have a 10% death rate among healthcare companies.
So because somebody got sued once for an issue, that means that it's an industry-wide norm? Like, I can show you, I can also show you, hold on, I'm curious. Will you acknowledge that there are patients that scam doctors and insurance companies for medication?
100%. And
Okay.
hospitals.
And there are hospitals that scam patients as well, and there are doctors that scam hospitals by overcharging
the
overbilling.
recent anesthesia problem.
Okay, yeah, but we wouldn't say
brought
that.
up in
But we wouldn't say that all of these systems are corrupt because sometimes people scam people, right?
I didn't argue that at all. I
What
just
if
said that
the
they had a
state was
financial incentive to act poorly because they have a get out of jail free card at the end of the year provided to them by the government.
I don't think you can defraud somebody of their insurance, and as long as you hit that 80-20 ratio, you get out of jail free. You still have to give a reason why you deny people their claims. You have to give a reason for it. It's part of the law.
Sure, absolutely. And the hassle
What-
of
could you-
administrative
could you
stress
explain
leads
what
to
are the
some of
different-
those denials being dropped. If you want to say that's not true, that's fine. If you want to say, like, hey, I don't think that this is a widespread problem, there's actually nothing going wrong here at all, that's totally fine. Just live with it is an acceptable answer. The problem is this shooting is a referendum on just live with it.
No,
I
it's
think that
not.
normal
It's a
people have
crazy,
figured out the
random, rich
crime.
loser guy who had no negative experiences with unaffordability of healthcare, unattainability of healthcare, who just wanted to kill somebody to get famous. That's all he's doing.
I
That's all
don't
he's
think those
done.
are mutually exclusive at all. The
Do you
leverage
think
is here.
that's why he killed him, to get famous?
Yeah, of course. What do you mean? What do you think his reason was?
I don't know. Did you read the
mentally
book that he
unwell.
read? Yeah, I like. Do you think he
Read
wrote?
the book that he read. He did write a manifesto. I
Yeah, he
mean,
wrote a
did
manifesto.
Say why
wrote-
he did it, right?
He tried to remain anonymous. Like he didn't. Like they caught him. It wasn't like, hey, look at me, everybody. Like, where's that?
The
coming
guy
from?
that wrote the manifesto tried to remain
it wasn't
anonymous?
released until they captured him. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's be clear, my
Ash-
argument doesn't believe on that. I don't think that those are mutually exclusive at all. He's definitely a weird, crazed weirdo that
Well, if you read,
far-
and if you, okay.
I far prefer Ash's way of thinking about this in terms of incentive structures. I think it is perfectly reasonable to think, hey, there's a system here that might incentivize certain insurance companies to sometimes deny claims that they should otherwise pay out, assuming that even if the person appeals it, they will have to pay it out because they just expect the person not to appeal it. This definitely happens in car insurance. It's probably happens in health insurance. This is part of the ProPublica reporting. It's a good series. You guys should read it. It's convoluted and hard to appeal denials of health insurance. Sure, that probably happens. There's probably an incentive there.
It's
that
not
happens
probably.
sometimes.
This is like there have been McKinsey documents released that proves that this is their official strategy.
My question is,
sorry.
even if I concede that, I'm still not sure which parts of this are relevant to who gets the Luigi treatment, right? So you also have brought up institutions treating people as numbers that lead to harm or death. What other industries do this? I'm sure it's more than just health insurance, and I'm sure it's more than just car insurance. Do the CEOs of other companies that treat people as numbers for profit that leads to harm and death, do they get the Luigi treatment too? Right? And again, which parts of the C-suite get the Luigi treatment, right? Where do we cross this threshold, and which of these companies apply? And my other question that I was going to ask earlier, that and again, I'll try to not, I'm not trying to make you guys Fed post, but let's assume that Luigi had attempted his act and had failed, or had never attempted it at all, and you guys magically did know that Brian Thompson was the CEO of UHC, even though you didn't know that before. Would you be on this panel advocating that somebody go out and give him the Luigi treatment? And if not, why not? And if so, who else is on that list? I just don't know where this principled stance is coming from, that this is the thing to do now and it's good and we should praise him for it.
Well, this is the whole second part of my argument. I'm glad you asked. So, I don't condone necessarily the murder, but the reason I don't is because I think we are closer than we ever have been to getting a single payer, except for maybe not ever have been because of who's about to be president. But it is possible to reform within the system. It is possible to elect someone who will actually change this. The issue I have is, while I might not have that issue, what do you tell the people who are dying and suffering today because of these policies? What are they supposed to do to fight this? Because you can say, hey, in 2 years, maybe we'll have someone who changes this. In 4 years, AOC is going to be president. Maybe she'll, do some crap. But what the hell do you tell the person today that their mom is being denied her medication and dying, that is not getting the...
The reality is, the problem is that that's just probably not really happening. This is a fabrication that you're putting in front of people because it sounds good, because very few of you, if any of you, and you even have engagement with the healthcare system. This didn't even crack the top 5 issues that Americans voted on last election cycle. This is the
because
same
no one
type of-
knows.
This is
You should have
To be
killed
clear- to be
someone
clear,
before.
most people-
No one knows that everybody in the U.S. is dying because they can't get medication. How is it?
When
that
did I
you,
say everybody?
How is it that you
First of all, the number is
how
like
it that people-
40,000, and that's probably
how is
inflated. I
How
didn't
is
say
it
it
that
was
people
everybody.
in Colorado and Pennsylvania and Michigan are somehow convinced that illegal immigration is one of the worst issues facing this country, but they don't know that health insurance and
Because
healthcare
that's
is one
what
of the
people
worst.
are talking about. And now we're talking about healthcare. And if a bunch more people did that, maybe they would have voted on that in the election, but they didn't, and
Yeah,
no
but
one
if you're
did. Like I
saying
said,
that
you
we
had
have
no
to-
videos on it before. A lot of people weren't talking about this.
Sure, and if nobody's talking about it, what would that lead you to believe? It seems like it's probably not having the impact that you're trying to make us believe. If the only way you can get somebody to care about a particular, you don't have to talk about inflation.
Are you implying that if no one's talking about something, it's not happening?
What I'm implying
When's
is
the last
that
time you saw them talk about climate
Well, you
change on
gotta let
Fox
Destiny
News? It's
answer
not
that
climate
happening
change is talked about almost constantly. What are you talking about? It was part of major legislative packages that Biden passed.
on Fox News.
On
They're
Fox
talking
News, they
about
have
the problem
anti-climate-
that climate change is. They're talking about, wow, the climate's really in trouble and we really need to do something about it.
They're probably giving opinion. They're probably anti-climate change, but they're probably
Yeah,
articles on it that I can find in the last
they
week.
bring up the Biden bill, they dismiss it immediately, and then they don't talk about it again. And then
There's
suddenly
literally
it's not a
5
problem because
articles in the past 2 days. Blue state governor's climate law, a plot to get left.
yeah, they're all talking about how much they hate the people trying to solve climate change. They're not really talking about climate change
Yes,
and the
but
effects
the point
of it
that
at
I'm
all.
but the point that I'm giving you is that if nobody's even really talking about this till somebody gets killed, it's kind of strange to come out and be like, oh yeah, healthcare is like killing tens of thousands of people in the United States every
first
single
of
year.
all,
It's like,
Well, I mean, I
people
think
that
this is.
it's
I think
affecting are being
I'm
talked
going to finish
to.
a sentence before I get cut off. Holy shit.
ahead, sorry.
The issue is that you're on one hand, we're saying that healthcare and lack and denials and claims are poor moms, because this is the example you keep giving. Poor moms are dying because they're not getting their pharmaceutical, whatever they need, because health insurance companies are arbitrarily denying them these things. I feel like if this was happening at an appreciable level and aren't just like horrible mistakes or companies individually just making bad decisions or wrong decisions, if this is like a norm in the industry, we'd be hearing about this a ton. It wouldn't just be an issue that's being brought up now because Luigi shot some dude.
Yeah, did you read the Senate report
I mean,
on this?
Summarize it for me. What is the Senate report on this that you want to summarize?
Yeah, so essentially they investigated that the post-acute care that's supposed to be provided to people was being denied at rates like 3, 4, 16 times higher than the normal denial rate after these systems were implemented. Post-acute care being denied does end up permanently hurting people, taking all the money out of their pocket, or killing them. Do you deny that that's true?
I don't deny that a Senate report said it. Wait, so real quick.
Do you want here? I'll link it to you. In the,
Yeah, go
is
for
there,
it.
like, a
Link it.
chat
And
here?
go ahead and I'll go through it.
Yeah.
Wait, is this one released on October
I-
17th? Okay, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, that's the one. You got it. Cool.
Okay.
I would also just like to note, I think a part of the reason that we see, I mean, first off, I would argue that right now over the past 2.5 decades, we're actually seeing an all-time low in the American opinion of their health insurance. I would also like to note that that insurance agencies actually spend a large portion of their profit, or I guess not profit, of their revenue on
administrative law.
advertising, explicitly because a lot of what an insurance agency is selling, it isn't actually something tangible. It's the feeling of safety. It's the idea that you can go out and drive, and maybe if you end up in a horrible accident, you're not going to be fucked up the ass because of it. So I think that has to be considered when you're talking about the American public's perception of insurance agencies as a whole. That's why they spend so much money. And I think that's also why they purport themselves to be, a friendly neighbor, why they say that you're in good hands, why they have a cute little gecko that's selling you something, and they have amazing jingles for every single one.
So just to kind of put things into context, while it perhaps may be true that we are at an all-time low, at least in America, for how they perceive the healthcare system, when you ask people how they perceive their individual healthcare coverage, it's 60 to 70% approval rates, right? Like a majority of people like the coverage that they get. And
I do think Destiny's statement that a lot of people don't actually have that much interaction with their coverage in the first place goes to explain that. A lot of people don't have to make claims, and a lot of people aren't making claims until part of the way, a considerable way through their life in the first place. So I understand, but I don't know if that actually goes to address the whole issue.
Well, what does that say if the people that are the most supportive of Luigi are young people who don't really engage with healthcare that much in the United States?
I think it says that a lot of people feel really disenfranchised with the future of health in America. I think there have been, obviously tensions have been rising politically across the board, and I think a lot of people are scared that they won't be able to afford their future health care, especially seeing as technology advances in a lot of different aspects of the application of their healthcare.
Wait,
I
so
think all
just
the other
people are
people
worried
who-
because they think they won't be able to afford it in the future, but the people that are currently engaging with the medical systems have a higher opinion.
All the people that would have voted yes died because of denial. So
Well, like I said, I think a lot of the people that are voting yes probably don't have as intimate understanding and experience with the insurance industry as a whole, because I covered earlier about 80% of about 80% of claims are approved. It's not that every single claim is being denied.
I just have such like people right now are disaffected with every possible institution, right? Ratings for every institution at all
Yes,
levels are kind of
sure.
at all-time lows when it comes to trust. And healthcare, based on the stats Wick just gave us, I haven't actually looked at this particular stat, seems to be doing better than almost any other institution. So I just, yeah, people are bummed right now about a lot of things, but a lot of that is vibes, and a lot of that is not actual, like it doesn't actually track reality always. And so I don't know why I should hang my hat on, well, people are sometimes bummed about it, and the people who are most bummed, as Destiny is saying, are the people who are least involved with it right now and who know the least about it. Well, I don't particularly care. Like, again, I think there's merit to some of what you guys are saying. Like, hey, we should see more of the data about whose claims are getting denied and why. Like, we should, there are provisions in the ACA that could allow us to see more of this data that, for whatever reason, for various reasons, lobbying and everything else, have not been chased down. So maybe we can push for that, right? But I'm just not seeing where in this whole conversation we're having, we've crossed the threshold of now you get the Luigi treatment. And
Well, again,
I don't see you all grappling really effectively with the actual implications of saying, well, the Luigi treatment, at least in this case, was justified. Because I'm just not seeing any serious wrestling with like what else is justified on the arguments you're giving me.
I just like to know, again, I don't think that anybody should be going out and getting murdered. I personally am against murder in basically all the options. If we can exhaust, just like with healthcare, if we can exhaust all the other options first, I want to do that first. This is why I in my opening, and I keep going back to it, I think this is a result of tensions. I think this is a result of the modernization of society leading to higher rates of political violence in the first place. And I think I think health insurance agencies, I think companies in general should keep in mind that they are, at the end of the day, selling to individuals who are going to have feelings. They're going to respond to the feelings, which is why I keep saying murder does happen. Whether or not we justify it or whether or not we think it's morally good, it's going to happen, and there should be mitigating factors.
I'm going to assume that the insurance adjusters have a possibility of social unrest priced into the algorithm they're employing, yeah.
Ash has been raising his hand for a while.
Look, I can do this. I promise you, right? Everyone wants to try to help moderate. I get it. I'll make sure that the people who get to speak are the ones that are.
So when it comes to young people, about 15% of them are being actively treated for mental health issues that's going to interact with healthcare or health insurance in some way. The reason why fraud and other financial crimes are treated with not just making up for the original loss.
Wait, hold on, real quick. Wait, what was that 15% speaking to? What was the point of bringing that up?
You want to wait until I finish the end of it?
Well, no, because you just lied, kind of. You just implied like a falsehood. I said earlier that younger people generally don't have as much engagement with healthcare as older people, and it feels like you brought that up to try to fight against that claim. Are you fighting against my characterization that older people have much more engagement with the healthcare system than younger people? If so, just say that.
Older people have much more engagement. Older people have much more engagement than young people.
Okay, just making sure.
General.
All right, go ahead.
Do you have anything else to add?
Go ahead.
No, that's good. Just making sure we're clear.
Any other confusion about whether the statistic there?
Crystal clear.
Do you have any kind of confusion as to whether or not the statistic is accurate? The 50% of them are interacting with being treated for mental health.
15 or 50?
15. No, 50 would be really high.
Oh, 15% have what in the past year have sought some kind of treatment? Probably this sounds okay to me, sure.
So they're interacting with the healthcare industry, and so the point I would bring up is hey, these people are being treated. They're interacting with the healthcare industry. Sorry, I just got back on track. So the reason why financial crimes are treated they're not just punished for the original loss. They're not just punished for the time value of money that hasn't been collected in the meantime, and other kind of financial stress or emotional stress or whatever, but are often treated with punitive damages, sometimes an order of magnitude in excess of the original claim, is because fraud has a corrosive effect on the rest of business writ large, the rest of culture writ large, society writ large. And that's why we punish them so heavily when we do find, especially insurance companies, one of the great successes of the American legal system is that when these do eventually get to court, a lot of them are really raked over the coals by judges, which is, again, a point in favor of the American legal system. The reason
wouldn't that also be a point against the for example,
against Luigi.
extrajudicial killings?
Yes. No, yes, it would. The reason that happens is, again, because it's corrosive to the rest of people's trust in the care that they're engaged with. And the problem there is that healthcare or health insurance, all insurance really, is not just selling risk management, but selling trust. And so if you have this system that's corrosive to social trust writ large, that's going to lead. How many people are not going to appeal claims that could have been sent through because they just don't want to deal with the hassle, or they think that they're going to have to engage in some long, drawn-out legal battle in order to actually get their needs met? How many people are not going to go to the doctor and not get preventative treatment that might have saved their lives because they just
how
don't want to go through
hold
the
on,
hassle?
just real quick to engage with that.
Let me.
How does Luigi doing what he did influence that in a positive manner?
In a positive manner. This dovetails with a few other threads that we were going through earlier, but
I'm
it
trying
puts
to tie
a
them together. I'm
face.
giving you this
Yeah,
opportunity
no,
to tie
it puts
these
a
threads
face to
together.
an evil
Put a bow
group
on
of
it.
people and personalizes it for the rest of society. So now that healthcare, which is this amorphous, problematic issue that a lot of people deal with, a lot of people, by the way, still say they might be happy with their healthcare, but something like 70% of them say that it's stressful or like a major hassle. That percentage of people who are happy with their healthcare overall has gone down significantly just over the past year. The recent Gallup polls have been down about like 10 to 20% across the board. If you just compare it to 2023.
I'm looking at it right here on
This
Gallup. It's a 2% decrease, which is a decrease, but it's not
Hold on.
10, 20 points.
All right.
At least for the Americans' views of the quality and coverage of their own healthcare.
The Ipsos poll went down
You
to
keep citing
3 in 5
data,
Americans.
but it's not complete data and it's not accurate data. It's
Right.
data that is very seen through very specific lenses that seem to strengthen your
Which is
point.
why I
But then
offer
when
the
you
competing
bring
point
out
that like
lens
3 in 5
back,
Americans view it as being very stressful, which is obviously going to be harmful to their health. Like obviously. So the whole point of killing somebody in that case and what the effect that has on the conversation is a reminder that the people doing this, whatever this happens to be, have names and addresses. And so that provides people a little bit more leverage, a little bit more negotiating power. I don't think it's right. I definitely want a ceasefire here. But if people are going to defraud and corrode social trust over and over and over again for the hope that they can keep their margins up, then I'm not going to feel bad about it. And that's why you've seen like this outflow of overall support. God, I really wish you hadn't interrupt me in the middle of that. I had a broader point that I forgot.
I have a question. Okay, you're arguing that this incident gives the people who have grievances more leverage in the power struggle of resolving whatever problems exist. Do you think that this gives them more leverage than legal decisions against these companies? So United Health Group, for example, in the past, in the mid 2000s, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, had a CEO who was ousted through a weird stock buyback fraud thing and was forced to pay back hundreds of millions of dollars of blah, 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 right? That significantly hurt the company, significantly hurt that person, pushed him out of his position, pushed the company to adopt new policies. Do you think that did more damage to the company, or that like killing him at that point would have done it? Or for Brian Thompson, right, who was currently the subject of a lawsuit and an investigation into insider trading and a variety of other alleged crimes, right? Do you think that if that had gone through and had been chased down to its end, that would have given people more leverage, or, just shooting them in the back on the street did it? I guess, like, on the question of efficacy, I'm just not convinced by any of you. And it seems like some of you all are saying, well, I don't know if he was justified. I'm not arguing for it, but, maybe it's
No,
fine.
let me respond to that directly with two examples. One, I don't think that it would have provided, I don't think that the lawsuit going forward would have provided anybody leverage. Because again, Brian Thompson, to your point, nobody knew who Brian Thompson was before this at all. The point of leverage is
if the lawsuit is about internal policies of the company that are ultimately defrauding the customers of the company, and they're being punished for that at a national scale to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Does that not help the customers of the company? Like, I just don't understand.
Only if they organize around it, and only if they know that it's happening. But to our earlier points, the reason why so many claims get denied and then do not proceed forward in arbitration whatsoever is because people view it as a hassle. The legal means of legal recourse is viewed as being sometimes above your station or inaccessible for whatever reason. It's unfortunate. It's often, by the way, not true. And it's a shame that people don't proceed with arbitration more often. They would have less hassle if they did take that additional step forward. However,
how do we know? Wait, how do we know that it's not just that most of the claims denied were probably denied for an acceptable reason?
What does acceptable reason mean in this case? That it doesn't harm the person for having it denied, or the delay in their health
or that it's not
coverage hasn't
actually
harmed them at all?
eligible under the terms of the
yeah, that it
contract.
wasn't-
Or that a doctor just put in the
me.
wrong number. To be clear, there are tons of
Right,
claims
which
that are
gets
denied just because
adjudicated
the
between the
writes it
doctor
incorrectly.
and the insurer, or the hospital and the insurer usually, right? So
Wait, I have a
that's
stat
the
on
other
this.
reason these
Patient
stats are not
suffers in the
helpful, right?
meantime.
Is because when it's errors in paperwork or when it's pre-authorization things, these are solved between the provider and the insurance company, not the patient. The patient is not usually liable for things like paperwork errors that you were describing earlier.
Well, that still doesn't go.
That also
If the patient's
forces
not,
that also
if the
delays
patient
their
doesn't have
treatment.
access to care for some certain, if the patient doesn't have access to care when they need it, it doesn't matter whether or not it was a doctor's fault or the insurance company's fault, or maybe the insurance company is being a little unfair in this one.
Wait, but-
it matters
we
for
don't
the
know
guy
what
you
percentage
killed,
of these
though, right?
denials
The problem-
happen after the treatment, right? We don't have any numbers about that either. So the majority of these could be denial after treatment is provided. The insurance company comes back and says, we're not going to pay for that. And then the hospital and the insurance company fight it out. We don't have the numbers for this.
Yeah,
right?
they should
And
release
in the
those to make it
meantime,
easier.
if
Wait,
you
hold on. Let me
require
read this
Sure,
stat.
advocate
Oh my
for
God.
that.
I do. So the Massachusetts Insurance Fraud Bureau. So this is something that interacts with the companies. The companies report cases that could be fraud from consumers to them. They had 17,274 cases over a 10-year period, and of those, only 368 were actually found to be fraud. So I know that's not reflective of the entire industry. This is just one example, but that was 2% of the entire potential fraud cases. So the other places that were denied, not saying 98% of them were denied for spurious claims, but a good chunk of them probably were. And
Wait a second. That number that you just cited, are you trying to convey the idea that the vast majority of what they consider fraud isn't fraudulent?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the proof for that was, tell me exactly what those two numbers are. Is it that 30,000?
So Massachusetts Insured Fraud Bureau. This is in the book that the shooter read, which I would recommend. It's really good. It's a 10-year period, 17,274 cases of reported fraud by the company, 6,600.
When you say cases of reported fraud, like these were court cases, or it's just that the company thought that we think that these are probably cases of reported fraud? Like they're not sent to a court.
I would guess the latter, because of those, the ones that were accepted by the Bureau, the ones that were actually referred to law enforcement were only 552. So of the 552, if you want to use that number, 368 out of 552, that's over 50% of them, but that's still a good chunk of them that are not fraud.
Oh, you see how huge your number, you see how you just went from 2% of those cases to over 50%, where you understand there's a huge difference between they thought something was fraudulent.
Sure, and that's why I said I don't think 98% of them are spurious denials, but I'm just saying that a lot of the suspected fraud is not fraud, and fraud is very rare. And of the ones that actually do go to court, which means it already passed the gate where they're like, okay, this is definitely something here. Yeah, over 50% of them are done it. I'm not trying to do a sneaky little numbers game here. It's just a matter of the suspected case.
This is sneaky because there's a lot of different things being said here. A case, do we mean a court case, or do we mean just a suspected case of fraud?
The court cases were of 552,
I understand, yes, I
so
understand.
that's after that.
I understand, but then also, you're not talking about fraud that's actually been committed. Are these cases that are recommended to a DA for criminal prosecution of fraud, where the evidence is going to be...
552 is referred to law enforcement authorities for possible prosecution.
Okay,
yeah,
so you're talking about
those
you're talking about fraud at a criminal level. Of course, that's going to be incredibly difficult to prove. There's a 99% burden. And if they're over 50% on the threshold for that, well, I guess it's probably 80, 90, 95% of these things then were probably actually fraudulent, right? Because this was proven in criminal court, right? And also, does that 52%, does that include settlements or pleading? Oh no, you can't settle. I'm sorry. Do these include plea deals, or are these just cases that went to trial and ended in conviction, or just...
I think these are all suspected of criminal fraud.
Okay, okay, so then assuming then everything that you just said was true, and I'm taking some of these things at face value, and now we've corrected.
It might not be true. I'm reading it from the book. But
sure, over half of the cases that were suggested to authorities, over half of those that were litigated ended in conviction. I don't know if the other half ended in plea deals or not, but even that rate is pretty high. So it's not just
right. But the other 17,000 are, hey, we're suspecting this is criminal, and of those, thousands and thousands were said, okay, no, there's nothing here. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, there's nothing here. Oh, we don't believe we can convict beyond.
That might be the case. It could be that they just say, look, we don't have the evidence.
Okay,
for this.
that is the case because that's how criminal court works in the United States of America. But
what I'm saying is like maybe a large percentage more. I don't know how much percentage more, but like this looks to me like fraud is not nearly as prevalent as these insurance companies intend to produce. I mean,
I don't know if insurance companies claim that fraud is a huge issue. I think it's just
they do. There's a whole chapter in the book about how they advertise fraud as the worst thing ever, and they're spending tons and tons of money trying to project it as the biggest problem in the world because that justifies them denying claims that may or may not be justified in being denied.
Okay, the vast majority of healthcare costs for insurance companies go into like paying for healthcare. I think the issue is just the rising costs of healthcare. It's not just people like committing fraud. Like a lot of that outpatient stuff you mentioned that I'm reading through this like Senate thing has to do with like post care for senior citizens. That's like some of the most expensive care that can be provided for. Like it's not a fraudulent issue. It's just a massively expensive expenditure.
Right. It's the most expensive and it's the most critical to those people, and they're denying that and ludicrously higher rates than they used to do because of these systems that they're using.
Yeah. So unfortunately. And I'm still reading through this, you say they're denying it at ludicrously higher rates than they used to. One of the big issues that I have with everybody that talks about literally anything in terms of data is when people are saying since 2019 to 2022, like
COVID.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that is making data like really crazy in this like 3-year time period, and it's like very sketchy when somebody's saying there's like.
Good that you mentioned that. You can look at the data and you can see that the number of people being applying for that care is much higher, which is probably due to COVID. But the percentage denial rate is still increasing.
Yeah, sure, but I'm just saying that the types of like acute post acute care or whatever that's being sought might be higher as well, and like yeah.
This is a point you made, Soy Pill, in your video as well. Not to keep bringing it back to that. I don't want to.
It's okay. Keep mentioning my video. Everyone should go watch it.
Oh, go watch the Soy Pill video. It's quite good. It's enjoyable. But you show this graph of people in the U.S. who self-report delaying medical treatments at higher rates over recent years, and the sharpest increase in that rate is in COVID tide, right? So I think there's lots of reasons why people would avoid seeking medical treatment during this time, right? Like if I just have a random cold or if I just have a random small injury, but I don't want to go to the doctor or the hospital, it's already overloaded because I've been told we're going to flood the whole system, etc. Like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and if systems that are used to deny these things at a specific rate are still in place before and after COVID, of course, then the more people that apply, the more people that are going to be denied. So I'm not saying it's all because of some, crazy malicious.
I mean, that's true whether fraud is happening or not, right? Like if more people apply, more people will get denied, right? Like that's
exactly. But the rate is going up too. It's not just the quantity. I do want to ask you something, Professor, because you mentioned, this is happening.
Just a little housekeeping thing. I want to get to that. Keep that in mind. I want to make a little money. Let me just rapid fire off these.
Write it down right now.
Right?
Hell yeah.
And then we'll get to that. Keep that. Write it down. Do what you need to do. I'll just gonna go through these lightning quick. Haywood Jablomi for $5. Thank you for the $5. If healthcare is a right, isn't fighting against those who took your rights correct? Major civil rights legislation didn't happen until riots. Thank you for $5. $10 from Cavalier 40. I work as a medical biller. Almost none of you know how the claim system works. Every denial has a detailed reason, and every denial of authorization is given a reason why it does not meet medical necessity. $2 from Testicle Johnson. Luigi is being persecuted because he's Italian. Smokestack says, much love, all debaters and enjoyers. God bless. And he gives 5 memberships and pays me $5. And then $5 from Portland is burning. 70% of people who like their personal physician, about 40% say their healthcare is good or great. Approval rating is at a 25-year low in the U.S. Thank you for the $5. Okay. Thank you. Soy.
What I wanted to ask, and I know this is an argument that I think Destiny has used before, a lot of people have used. So if we take something like January 6th, which I think was, completely based on lies, but you have a bunch of people who believe that every legal means of everything is exhausted to them, and they have no other choice but to go and commit some sort of heinous act to get what they want, and what they see as justice. in these cases where, I mean, Destiny, you still are not on the same page as me as whether or not the healthcare is doing this, but just for the sake of argument, let's assume that healthcare is denying at unfair rates, that they are doing what is tantamount to killing some percentage of people, even if they're not doing it maliciously. If that is the case, and if incremental change is not fast enough for the people that are being harmed by this, Professor and Destiny, what other recourse? Because I said this at the beginning, I will concede, if you can show me what immediate recourse these people have to take action and actually do something about it, what can they do?
I would not say that people in a variety of circumstances, even that might be life-threatening, necessarily always have immediate just recourses, right? There are people who develop cancer from some like malicious negligence or incompetence on the part of some company or party that dumps chemicals in the wrong place by a school or something, right? Like those people, by dint of their like imminent death, do not gain the right to go kill the people who cause these problems, even if it threatens their life, right? So I just
wait, why not? Like, you obviously you believe in self-defense, right? Like, I know that's not analogous 1-to-1, but like there's some line in between.
Right, I would say
as you separate like the action
imminence
from
is the issue, right? If someone is right now doing something that will in the immediate future.
Okay, so for the sake of argument, someone, if they don't get their healthcare, will die.
Well, hold on. I think there's probably a big. I think there's a big distinction between like a negative and a positive action as well. There's a big difference between somebody's doing something to kill you versus somebody's withholding something to kill you as well.
Yeah.
Right.
You stole it from me, but that's fine. Yeah,
like if you were, let's say that somebody broke into your house and you're on the verge of starvation and they stole all your food. Like, could you kill that person breaking your house? You could probably kill that person even if they're breaking your car. I think that we.
These are the intuitions,
right?
by the way, behind maritime law that says that you get the death penalty for stealing water at sea. Right?
Sure, but let's say that you're starving. Do you have the right to break into a store owner's bakery and kill them to steal their goods?
Yeah, the difference is I already paid for the bakery goods. They owe me the bread, and they're just saying no.
Yeah,
right?
That's not happening in the United States.
No, not a single person is denied the rightful payout.
I didn't say not a single person, but that's an
exceedingly so if one person, maybe it is exceedingly rare. Let's assume it is. Is that one person justified in then killing the person who denied them that care?
I think that, unfortunately, this situation there's too much obfuscation between the provider and the patient to draw a clear line there. If you did want to draw that clear line and say they could kill the person for doing it, then they would be justified morally to kill every single person up the chain of command. So you could go to the hospital.
What if the people are going to get fired if they don't do it, but the person in charge who implements these systems has the power to change it and doesn't?
Wouldn't he get fired too?
But he could
fired,
be a whistleblower. You don't do it,
Actually,
I'm sorry. Are you saying that those people are justified in saying, "Oh no, I'd lose my job if I saved this person's life"?
Yeah, if they'd starve to death on the street or be homeless. They're much more justified.
No, those people are complicit too, right? If you're in a situation where you can save someone's life or lose your job, you should save their life, of course, right? And that person's a bad person if they don't.
Like,
but
I'm
not going to kill the person.
Think
of the moral universe you're creating. You're standing right in front of a doctor, and you're like, "I'm having a heart attack. Like, I'm going to die." A cardiologist is right in front of me, and the guy's like, "Sorry, bro, but I'm off my shift." And you go, "Well, you know what? Fuck you, cardiologist. I'm going to go kill this health insurer that's not paying you money to give me this treatment." Like, how does that make sense? You should be able to kill the doctor at that point, right?
Is he hot?
Yeah.
Wait, so okay.